Hello and welcome to WeAreDevelopers Live. It's Wednesday again, it's noon again, and again our guests couldn't show up this time. So I asked this many people to come, and all of them had different options. One of them had his wisdom teeth removed. So people without wisdom, we don't want to have this on the show anyway. So not a bad idea. But I remember when I had that, I had two of them done at the same time, and I was just knackered for a day. I was just gone. I mean, it feels like you won't think how much teeth are connected with the rest of your face and your thinking.
Yeah. And just, when you have that anesthetic, I remember having, I don't know if it's just because I'm hard as nails, Chris, but I had about five injections of that, and I could still feel it. And then because I had so much, like you say, it kind of wiped me out for about 3 days afterwards. You're just in a little dream world.
The other one is a professor at university, and she said that she can't do because they're having like interviews today, or like that they have to prepare things for the university. So I can get behind that as well to a degree.
Yeah, that's it.
So I mean, with that said, we just thought we're going to cover a few things, talk about a few resources, but also give you a behind the scenes of all the people that are not watching at the moment, to basically what's happening, what we're doing right now. As you know, we had the Congress going on, and we have all the recordings now. They were all available on the app already for people. But of course, we want to take these materials and give it out to the world as well, without having to use the app and without having to buy a ticket to later on see what they missed. And I'm editing all of them right now. And I just want to quickly talk through how we do that, and what we've done there. And I think it's an interesting little insight of what you can do with just a few lines of code if you actually know what you're doing and you're wondering about that. So let me just quickly show you what's happening here. I mean, you haven't done any of that, Dan, yet. I mean, probably I will send out a few things to do next year, because I was just setting up my local machine here to basically do that bit by bit for me. So let's just see what we're doing here. So do I get the share screen?
While you do that, Chris, I will just say it is so nice though to actually for you to have had that approach, because I think when you're working with somebody else who's doing video, and that you might be part of the workflow, you might not, you might need to do something. It's really frustrating if you're somebody who wants to do things in a clever way, or do them like this at scale, and the other person is like doing everything manually, everything sort of the long way. So the fact that you took the developer approach and just said, okay, is there a way we can cut through all of this and still get a good result, but do it quickly? I think it's nice to kind of see that being the way you've approached it, I guess.
Yeah. So, well, here's the bits that we actually, how we got that data. I mean, originally the data was basically huge files. I mean, some of them haven't uploaded yet. I get them right now. There's like 2-3 gig, but some of them are like 15, 16, 20 gig. And I just realized like there's no way that I can actually start editing those in an editor and start cutting things. So the way I've approached that was using FFmpeg on the command line and actually cutting them. And there's one blog post I'm going to write in a second that basically shows you how to take like 5 video files and cut from the same timestamp to the other timestamp just on the command line with like a script and a loop. And I think that's something that a lot of people underestimate, what you can do on the command line just to edit those videos, because dragging those into an editor would basically not be fun. I mean, you're the one who actually does all the pro editing. How does it work? Do they actually try to get them into memory, or do they actually batch them into memory chunks? So how do you open a 50 gig video without your computer dying?
So a lot of the time, the best way to do it is to use what they call proxies. Now, I'd have to really drill into like exactly how that works, because it's not something that I've really kind of looked at how proxies actually work. But effectively, what they do is kind of like having a low res version of your video, and it matches up with the original. So the timestamps all stay the same, and it just creates a link. And then that way, what you can do is kind of work with your proxies, and at the end, just switch them all out with the original file. The downside to that is you still need to wait for it to render your proxies. So all you're doing really is taking like the export step, and you're sort of doing it at the start, but you're just re-exporting the same clips into these kind of small proxies before you start. So yeah, that's generally how it works. But 50 gig, that is, yeah, it would just be a nightmare, especially if it's 4K. So a lot of the video that's being rendered, you can't even see because the chances are your project is just 1080, you know, so.
Yeah, and the main thing that I realized is like these original files are actually the quality is far too high for what we want them for. We just want to have like a quick thing on YouTube. So all of them have been streamed. So what I thought about like just pulling them from the stream, downloading them, and then editing them, and then uploading them again. So that's basically what I'm doing. So the workflow is like get the thing from YouTube, then actually cut the beginning and the end, and then add an intro at front of it, an outro at the end of it. And then we had another problem because we don't, when you look at the video recordings, they all don't always show what's on stage. We have these great intros for people that basically use a bit of music and their name and the title of the session. And the cameraman was just filming his feet or anything randomly in between. So we couldn't use those as a cue when to actually start editing. So the main thing that I've done are a few scripts that are out there. The other problem that we had is like the images that I got from our design team, which are basically the images that show you the title of the session and the name of the user, the name of the person. So we could basically say like 30 powerful hacks here, and that's all on Google Drive. And the problem with those is that they were actually the stage assets. So we had them and showed them on stage for the stage crew. So the stage crew didn't want them by name of the session. That's this one here, but actually by time. So that was the other thing. So just searching for the name of the session was not good enough. So the first thing I did was actually go to Sessionize, and that's the tool that we're using for getting all the information there, and get the sessions out into a TSV file. TSV, you might not know, it's actually a CSV, but without the commas. So instead of a comma, it actually separates by tab, because you're not likely to have a tab in a text, but when you have a comma, you have to put the quotes around the content to make it comma separatable. So TSV is something that Numbers on Mac OS actually uses. I didn't even know that existed. But it's so much easier to use that in your code than CSV, because you don't have to wonder about like, are there quotes around the data, or was there a comma in the original title and there's a comma in every bloody one of those titles. So that's the thing that we had to do. And
I guess, Chris, it might just be worth at this point, though, just mentioning this is kind of our single source of truth, isn't it? Because we kind of applied these programming principles to our workflow last year. And we were sort of saying, if everything starts with Sessionize, that's where we need to begin with everything. So that's kind of what this is, just to put this in context, I guess, is all of our raw data, so we can match everything up with the specific session that we're editing.
Yeah, there's also an extension that I have. I can't remember what the name was, CSV lint. And it actually takes CSVs and TSVs and actually gives it a sticky title here, and you can scroll through it. So this is a really, really good way to actually read a CSV as a human, rather than just like having it as a. I mean, I'm not good with a mouse. I hate that in Excel you have this horizontal and vertical scrolling, and here you don't. You can just switch from the line break and non-line break if you wanted to. So this is really, really useful for that. And then I thought like, okay, I got the sessions here, and I've got the YouTube URLs here, which is the ones where it was streaming. So the first thing I did was write a script called pull, and that one actually just goes through all these and reads the headings and reads the data from that TSV, and then it actually loops through all the things and starts looking for it. So what I do here is I actually say like, I want to have the stage name main stage, and compare that. And that one now gives me all the talks of that data that are actually in that session. So I can actually block these ones out and can see what that looks like. So if you now open the terminal here, oops. You know how I become completely incapable of doing something useful when you're actually showing it? I mean, before that, I've done that all day now, and there was no problem whatsoever. But yeah, now it's actually, okay, fair enough. I don't know what to do any longer. Anyways, so this script now is basically the pull script, and I put that exec command here, pulled that one out so you can see what that one looks like. So PHP pull. Wow, I'm really bad at this. There you go. And that one actually gives me all the stages, all the data that I can actually take a peek at. And then it says like, okay, I found like 45 sessions in the main stage, and it then actually says like I'm getting the files, and I'm getting the files one by one. And actually, I don't know why it executes. Oh, I didn't save it. Damn it. So I'm overriding things that I had done earlier. Okay. Anyways, now it actually just says like getting the file 1 of 45 and so on and so forth. And to get the data from YouTube, I'm using a tool called YTDLP, which is like new for a better version of YT download YouTube downloader. And what you can do with that one is, if you have, for example, any of the IDs, you can download them. But you can also check what versions are out there. Because one thing I found that's really, really frustrating about YouTube right now is that when you download, when you want to download, it gives you only like the WebM version. It doesn't give you the MP4 version, because it seems like for streaming and stuff, WebM is much better in the browser. So that's why you actually have to see which version you want. So with YTDLP -F, you can see all the different versions that YouTube has on it.
Very handy.
And then you can download them with all the codec information and see which ones you want to have. And that's why we actually have to get started with like adding some really, really complex things in there, because lately YouTube has been changing a lot, that it becomes harder and harder to download videos from it, which is of course understandable because it's piracy. But getting your own videos is actually not that easy either, because the API is not that straightforward. So I'm using that YTDLP instead. And then you have to do things like extractor arguments, like the client TV embedded, because if you just do a web download, it doesn't give you that. Then you have to get the cookies from the browser. So in my case, I'm getting them from Edge to simulate that I'm using Edge to actually download it from YouTube.
Oh, wow.
And then I actually have the output of videos, and I enforce it to a merge output format MP4. So it's actually downloading the WebMs and the other versions, but it actually converts it to an MP4 on the fly for me. So once we've done all of that, and we basically have all the information on our machine, we then can start thinking about the images and stuff. And this is where it gets really interesting, because you saw with the images that they were actually in a subfolder with a date and a name. And I basically all I wanted to have is a picture that has that ID in it. So I'm actually again using just a loop over over the current folder, and if it's basically MP4s, then basically then filter those out. And then I'm using a find on the command line to basically recursively look through all the folders. And when it finds something with the name of the intro, then basically that's the PNG that I want. And then I copy it over to the folder of the videos right now. So when when I run that script, and I don't want to break things right now, so I'm just going to show it. When I run that script and actually go through the folder, then it will have, hang on, I got to go to that one. It will have basically all the videos in here. So you have the video of the growth hacking thing right now here, and you have the PNG next to it in the same folder. Now, the next problem was that images and converting and merging them with videos, you can do that in an editor, but it's not that easy in FFmpeg. So I had to write another script to actually convert all the images to MP4s. So here again, I'm going through the stage 13 folder, and then I actually use FFmpeg to take the image that we have. So in this case, is the image to the image file name with the stage and PNG, and I convert it to a video with an empty audio track. So if you just convert it to an MP4, you couldn't merge it because there's no audio track. So you had to create a null source does that. So you basically create an empty audio file and then convert all of them to MP4s. And that way, when you look at the folder right now, you then have the stage 13 image, and that's basically a 3-second video of the video that we have right now. So and yeah, that one also is defined here. So you can basically say like this time here is 3 seconds. 30 is basically the frames per second. So you have to sync that with the video as well. And once I've done all of that, I can start the conversion process. So this one is now another script that basically takes a massively complex filter, which just says like, get the first video and audio, get the second video and audio, the third video and audio, and the fourth video and audio, concatenate them together into one file, n equals 4, and in one video stream and audio stream, and and then basically just make it into another thing. So I said like, okay, intro MP4 is the first video that I want. Then I want image, video, and then outro.mp4, and then write it out to what I want to have. Then I replace these command things with the videos that I want to have in the loop, and that actually then generates all these videos bit by bit, and then I have all the videos in a folder called done inside that folder. So that can run in the background while I'm editing the other videos again. So
okay, that's nice.
I did not know that string replace does this as well. Like, I love that. Normally I would do a preg replace and do like matching of 3 different things and replacing with 3 different things. But in PHP, in string replace, you can feed in an array and replace it with an array, which you can't do in JavaScript, or there might be ways around it. So if anybody has some cool new feature of JavaScript that does that, but I find that really readable, much more readable than a super complex regular expression that does that.
I see what's happening there. Sorry, I was just because I was just trying to work out then when you replace the array with an array, does it just overwrite the entire array, or is it like individual instances of, is it like a find and
replace? It basically says like, okay, this means like do a string replace on this string. First, go through the. It could be just a command string replace that with that, command string replace that with that, and this way you can write it much shorter. I have to clean that up, but I found it really interesting that that was a thing that actually worked out. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating what you can do with that. And within 1 week I went through that. The other feature that we talked before as well, which I find super exciting right now in macOS, is that you can take a video and you can just cut it live. So this is what I'm doing here with all the videos. I find a nice intro, listen to it. I find the outro bit, listen to it, and then basically just replace the original video. Turned out this was actually much slower than I was used to, and then I realized it was because I'm actually doing it on a external hard drive where I'm trying to write to it at the same time. So it was just the I/O speed was the slowness of it. But this is basically what we're now going through with all the videos, and I think there's a lot to be gained by that. I'm going to do a write-up again, what I changed this year to last time. But I think it's incredibly powerful what you can do with a few scripts of PHP and a bit of knowledge about video editing.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of pick up on a tiny point, that actually the point I'm making is that this tiny little change has been massive, I think, which is the title slides. I quite like that little quirk, how you said, well, it doesn't accept images, so I'll just convert it to an MP4. And it's like, okay, that's kind of, it's almost like it's Occam's razor, right? It's the simplest approach, but it just works. But it's actually, that was last year. That was a whole step in the workflow, and this year ahead of time, Tom, one of our devs, worked with yourself, I believe, to kind of generate all of these images. And yeah, okay, the labeling, is tricky because that was us versus the stage crew, and like you said, they want a date, whereas we just want that sessionize ID. But what a great way to, because again, that might just be a 1 minute time saver by having that doing it on the command line rather than having to actually create the image and put it into Premiere, but times that by hundreds of videos, and it's massive, isn't it? So yeah, it's really cool to see how we can iron out these little details.
One thing I want to do though, which I haven't done yet, is to basically upload that directly to Drive. But the Drive API, I found it not as accessible as it should be. It's like, of course, it's a virtual folder on your machine, so probably I could copy that into that one and then sync in the background. But I found that it's just like it grinds down the computer to a halt. So basically, what I'm doing right now is generate the whole folder, edit the whole folder, and then run the script, and then drag it over by hand into the web interface, and that's the fastest thing. And the disconnect between Google Drive and YouTube drives me crazy as well. Like, why,
Yeah, I know completely. It's especially where, where in my previous job, obviously I was working in education and we had everything stored on Google Drive, but everything went to YouTube. And yeah, it just wasn't as easy as it should have been. It should have felt almost like they were integrated in so that they, you had half of the features from one in another is kind of what it felt like you needed. But there's always this wall between them, and it's not easy to go from one to the other, and it should be.
One of our earlier guests, Stefan Judis, actually wrote a really nice blog post about how he creates his YouTube training videos and stuff, and
Very
what
good.
tools he uses. And I found that very, very nice of him to actually get that information there. There's not much scripting going on there, but there's a lot of services that he uses, and actually making sure what hardware he uses and so on and so forth. So I think that's a really, really lovely way to have that written up. And he's done a really, really good job describing that. And I mean, the setup I probably have to change a bit as well, but it means I have to clean my flat and not use the virtual background, and that's just not on.
Or just do the place just behind you, as we said last week. This is the only bit that's tidy in my entire house. No, it's not, but might as well be. Yeah, it's the only bit you have to see anyway.
But my flat is the size of that. That's basically it. Like, I live in that thing. So that's the bigger problem. So other than that, I think another thing that I've done lately, which might be something interesting to look at people, is you can use GitHub Pages as a URL shortener and redirection service, because it actually allows you to set up redirects of URLs. So because I found with Google, not sure what the future of it is. So I thought about doing something interesting there and actually just writing a GitHub redirect template that you can use. And it basically, you can do that. So you can basically have a redirecting thing that has like a progress bar and can ask for 10 seconds, or you can directly redirect your different URLs. And I'm using that myself with a short domain that I've written, that I bought. And I think it's a very, very simple way to get a redirection service without having to set up a database or like do all kind of clever things. And it was an interesting research for me into YAML and into Liquid and all the stuff and Jekyll that GitHub Pages does. So take a peek at that and play with it. And I already have a few people who did pull requests that had some really good ideas on that one. What I found interesting in that is also that sometimes you forget about interesting tools. Like, let's try that. It's basically URL shortener. What the hell? Okay. Copilot, GitHub URL shortener. This is basically the template that you have. And when you have a short URL server here, this one is actually one that redirects on the server, so it's immediate. So there's no information going on there. You have no idea to actually what's happening. And what I found interesting is I was wondering if actually GitHub does that on the server, because it's actually a gem in Ruby, and it would be in PHP again. It would be one line of code saying like, okay, do a 302 and redirect to the other bit, and you will never ever do something. You never render a page. You go directly on the command line to the other bit. And what a lot of people don't forgot about is if you do Command Shift U, you can actually do view source, of course, on any HTML page. But that actually works with everything. So I can do a view source on that redirector here now. That is the server redirector. And if you take a look at that, it actually shows you the stuff that GitHub does there and actually applies it. So if you just want to see what something does under the hood, view source works with everything, not only with the bit that you want to have. So this is something that actually they came up with, and it's interesting to see that. And yeah, I have to say I've written all of that from scratch, but actually GitHub, the VS Code Copilot, GitHub Copilot in VS Code now has an agent mode, and it did a lot of stuff for me that was really interesting, because I didn't talk to it, but the auto-completion is now much more evolved. So basically it says like, you're changing this here, and then it highlights bits in the other part of the script that says like, oh, if you change that here, should I change it for you here as well? And that's much better than just IntelliSense. And I found it very clever the way it does that right now. Then again, it also hallucinated a few things that actually took me ages to find out. So instead of having like a curly brace percentage in Liquid, it did a double curly brace, which is a print command rather than an execute command. So all my if statements didn't work. And it also, you have to say end if in Liquid, and it just put end in there. So in certain languages, I guess these machines are better than in others. but it was a very, very powerful thing to actually get started with and actually improve what I've done. But now handing over to you, we wanted to talk about vibe coding, and you basically did a bit of research on that, on an article that's going to come up soon. So what's going on there?
Yeah, so I have actually just published it on WeAreDevelopers.com, and I went back and forth a little bit on the title because, you know, I didn't want to sort of fall into a point that I've actually made in the article about so much of what's going on around vibe coding is this kind of catching headlines with things that you're saying or supposedly doing. We'll just see if that's there. It is. So I went for this kind of lessons for vibe coders and developers because the other day, if you scroll down a little bit, there's the sort of the original thing that kind of inspired it. So I saw this post. I think it was on Reddit. It was on maybe one of the product building, or could have even been like the vibe coding subreddit. But that very first post with the text that's highlighted was somebody just saying, you know, something like, this was in response to someone saying like, I'm 85% of the way there, was the point that they're making. So that makes some sense, because they were sort of having some issues with the Stripe API. So this person then in response is saying, I use and recommend Stripe, but I don't think you're 85% of the way there, because I'm a real engineer that watches vibe coders fail every day with glee. Now, what this did was made me think about the attitude and like, where does it come from? How do developers feel about vibe coders? Do they even identify as vibe coders? Because some people are both, you know, they're not mutually exclusive. And it kind of made me think about whether this is just sort of like bitter people about the whole AI is going to, you know, take away our jobs. Is it actually that the claims of the vibe coders themselves are annoying developers because they're, as I said, trying to grab headlines? And so I just sort of started doing some research and dug into it a little bit. And there's a link actually on your links on the left hand side that might be a good place to start with this, because when I started my research, I kind of obviously went to the stats about the T
secrets. App. Which one is it?
Oh, okay, yeah. So we'll go with the T app. So if I tell you a little bit about what this is, really, I mean, you can go really far down an entire rabbit hole that I won't go too deeply on with this one, but essentially the headline kind of gives you some idea of what it is. So it's an app where to supposedly help women date more safely. They could go on the app and they could share secrets about, or share rumors, which is questionable, share information about men that they had dated. And it might be saying that they ghost them, or that they've lied and they've actually got a secret family they're not telling anyone about, or whatever. And the idea being that, you know, if somebody was a catfish or was ghosting or whatever, that somebody could go on there and almost do a background check for that person. Now, you can have your thoughts on the idea. My opinion was it's a nice idea, but it's questionable because, you know, obviously people could say anything about anybody on there. But I understand the kind of idea behind it of protecting women. Now, to get to my point, as you can see there, it's got driver's licenses, face pictures, selfies, all kinds of data. I think over 1 million private messages were all leaked from the app. And I'll just give you the shocking part, and it's in the article, but the technical reasons for it were mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. So it was a Firebase storage bucket where all the images were. There was no encryption, no authentication at all. So it was basically just a public URL anyone could visit with people's driving licenses on. Which blew my mind. And maybe what we'll do is, before we go any further, we could talk about that, because I mean, it didn't surprise me when this happened, but I will say that people straight away went at the CEO because they found on his LinkedIn, and this really hits upon the whole vibe coding thing, that he had 6 months of coding experience and then decided to build an app that deals with driving licenses and passports. You have to laugh because you cry otherwise, right? What's your thoughts on that, Chris?
I think it's interesting. Jan Moser, the guy who was supposed to be here today and couldn't make it, he actually wrote a big post about this as well, where he's like, "This is just incredible how somebody with 6 months experience." I mean, there's so many moving parts in that one. Like, first of all, why are there driving licenses in there? Is it just so people actually have to validate their age before they actually get in there?
Yeah,
Like, why would an app that actually is about online safety store or request something like that from me? Is it actually to have that validated as a real person? But then, I mean, there are third-party providers that you can scan your passport in and then get a token to validate your identity to get that in, rather than like storing images of the driving licenses. And interestingly enough, there is another app that is actually made for men, because I mean, as soon as you make an app that allows women to tell the truth about other men, men will write an app to tell the truth about women or invent truths about women like they normally do. And yeah, that one is as much of a personal thing. So that's the T on her here. Basically, that was that was also a date for men, and that had the same issue. And it just fascinates me, like, how did they not learn, like, from that concept? And moreover, as well, like, I think the other bit that drives me nuts about this is, as soon as something is on the App Store, people trust it. It seems
yeah,
like, and I mean, this is basically a whole shit show of security issues. And it was the number 2 app on the Apple Store for like a week or so, and even after the breach, it was still number 3 or 4. And
yeah.
instead of the app store providers basically blocking it and saying, like, by the way, there is an ongoing security breach on that thing, don't use it right now, or you can't use it at the moment, or the providers shutting it down, it just merrily went on.
Yeah,
So that's
no,
a
and
weird bit about that as well.
no, it is absolutely, and I think there's definitely something, when you were saying people trust it when it's on there. I think we looked last week at the list of VPNs currently available on the App Store and how questionable most of them are. To be honest with you, nearly all of them were questionable, and it definitely kind of gives you a sense of credibility. But the other thing that, kind of looking at the research for this, or doing the research for this, that was really interesting was how quickly you end up in these little corners of Reddit. And these are corners that are to do with things like men's rights. They're to do with feminism. They're both sides of the coin. And they were almost using this software as a way of kind of fighting amongst each other, these groups, because you had people cheering it on and saying, oh, this is brilliant, this is so good, or go get them. And this kind of way that it's being exploited and taken on by these groups, because really what the kind of thrust of the article wasn't so much about that. It was the way that developers are actually seeming to take joy at this. And I think what it was, in the article, Chris, I mentioned this about, and it got a lot of kind of a heated response, but in the way of people saying, because I said, is this gatekeeping? Is this going to put people off who might be considering actually learning to code? They might have gone on to, Bolt and created something, and then that's piqued their interest, and they've gone, I actually do want to learn to code. We don't want to write them all off as people who are doing this because they don't want to learn how to code. They might be doing it because they don't know how to. And my question was, are we actually gatekeeping by discouraging them, by labeling them, by othering groups, by saying here's developers, and then there's the other group, which is the vibe coders, and all these things kind of can work together to actually not be very helpful. And most people, one person said a really good response actually to this, where they said, maybe it needs to be gate kept. And I thought, okay, I don't know if I agree with that. I'm generally not going to agree with the idea of gatekeeping, but they made a good point. They said, really, it's for everybody's safety. If you're dealing with people's passports, is it not more important to protect that person's passport and their personal information than to open the door to somebody to join the tech community and and not gatekeep somebody? Which one's more important is kind of the point.
I think that's what it boils down to. Like, the thing that something that private got created by somebody who has no idea what they're doing, and without actually an infrastructure in place that would actually support saying, like, don't do this. Like, I mean, that it was a data lake or whatever they used, I don't know what cloud provider that they used, but actually, I mean, all these images are basically analyzed by AI. So when you upload a passport in an unencrypted storage of a cloud provider, the cloud provider, to me, should actually say like, don't do that. Much like when you try to put a key and secret into GitHub right now, GitHub doesn't allow you to do it, but actually throws an error and says like, use a key file for that, or use a key store for that instead. So there's a few people involved that actually make that perfect storm happening. But at the same time, I'm more worried about the idea of releasing a viral app as soon as possible, no matter how you build it, and then basically failing like this. I don't agree that anybody should feel glee at a security breach of an app of somebody else. But I also understand kind of like that people are miffed or like annoyed about the messaging about vibe coding, because the whole beginning of it was like, forget about the code. The code is not important. Your idea is more important, and just let the machine keep failing for you and keep building things for you. And it felt like really powerful and science fiction-y to me, but it also felt very like, with all the years and years of failure in my head, I know what can go wrong about these things. Like if you abstract away complexity, it doesn't make it automatically safe. And trusting that something says we're safe from the get-go is complete nonsense. It's always been complete nonsense. And I mean, there's so many things that annoy me about the acceleration of this. Like, I'm totally fine with people vibe coding that are not developers and basically building something for themselves, or even something to show as a prototype to get people out there and get them excited about your thing, rather than showing them Figma files or showing them PowerPoints. You just build something and show what the interaction does already. But we had this discussion internally about some tooling that comes out in our world as well, and we are developers soon. If you show people something that is actually too close to ready, you never get a chance to actually discuss the features. You never get a chance to actually build something really good. You just get the thing like, look, it already works. Okay, cool, let's ship it. And the let's ship it and use your end users as testers is a very, very dangerous thing. And I mean, there is a live and a staging server, and a live server is not spicy staging. It's basically a live server. This is only where code should go that's actually safe. But we cut through all of that for the sake of releasing something quick and getting a quick win. I mean, this app made money on the App Store, I think, and it basically is there. And the other example was that Draw Fish app that people got super excited about, that basically was allowing you to paint a fish, and then he would put it on a reel. I'm not quite sure how it worked, but like fish probability, and then I need to face right.
Yeah. I think it has to like pass the certain percentage, and then it kind of is qualifying as a fish. Then it gets added.
Yeah, and basically it got off on like Hacker News and became the most amazing thing, and then it got hacked immediately, and he paid like a lot of money for his use of AI of analysis of the fish, which is a really old model that could have done on the machine, even in memory. This is not that hard to detect. But as he used like an expensive like GPT whatever or whatever model, it became really, really expensive to him. And there were just like lots and lots of security issues, like 6-digit admin password, like in a past data breach.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah, the way that they found out, right, was that it's almost like the am I pwned or whatever it's called, you know, with the ones where you can find if your email.
I've been pwned, yeah.
It's crazy. And, it's a teenager.
It's I mean, you could feel glee about this because like, oh yeah, cool. The intent was to do a viral app. Not the intent was I want to do something. I want to build something that's fun for me or somebody else out there. And I mean, the T app basically has a very good idea and intention at heart. But I'm really wondering, like, it looked like more like a honeypot to me than really an app. If it really is supposed to be, if I have to validate myself with my driving license and all my identity, and I don't know where it goes. So,
yeah, and I'm saying things about people, you know.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. Like, I mean, it's kind of like if you're saying things about people, they should have the right to see that and to react to it as well. Or at least see it and know that something's happening. That's had always been the subtweeting or like the background channels of like conferences when rumors were spread about people without validation, and you could feel glee about it or say like, oh, well, finally that person has been taken down as well. Or you could just say like, it's pretty unfair that that person doesn't know about other people talking shit about them, or even accusing them of illegal things without having a chance to retaliate or say something about it.
Yeah.
But
I get, sorry.
Back to vibe coding. I mean, this was an interesting bit about the. I like that he did the post-mortem, and I like that there's more and more of those will come. I mean, we will realize that it's there, but I think it goes back to the original, I think, kind of arrogant statement of what vibe coding is supposed to be. And this is we're living in a time where there's grandiose statements about coding and technology, and I'm very worried about that because it's all marketing. It's not really anything there. I mean, you sent me this one that actually had me in hysterics. That's in 10 years' time, college graduates will be working some completely new, exciting, super well-paid job in space.
It really made me laugh because my first thought was, has anyone asked them if they want to go to space? I mean, that was kind of, it's almost like you can tap into that whole idea of, there are people here that are, for them it's their little playthings, for, I know it's his business, Sam, but he's I'm calling him by his first name like I know him, but it's his plaything, right? Playing around with AI, but it's his people's lives, and potentially if we're talking about sending them to space, we should probably make those decisions a bit more carefully.
And also just reconsider about where we're going in space. I mean, without a generational craft where we can have different generations travel to something, well, the distance is just far too far to actually do something useful. I think it's just a lot of like very rich, very white people worrying about that they're going to die. That they're going to die and there's nothing left of them. So there's a lot of like space race kind of things going on right now. Like, oh my God, space is the next thing. And I'm going to make my mark by being the first one to send people to space and back. And like, it's just incredibly wasteful, incredibly, I mean, there's lots of, you could say there's inventions coming out of it. I mean, the 1960s stuff gave us Velcro and things like that. We didn't have that before. And like lightweight materials that can endure a lot of stress and these kind of things. But it just feels to me like this, in a time where vibe coding and like not vibe coding itself, but the story of it, like, oh, anybody can build software. You don't need a developer to maintain that thing. Don't worry about it. A machine will maintain it. Telling people that in 10 years' time you will have a future in space is it's just horrible, that.
It's the dystopian science fiction, isn't it? It's I mean, I wonder, like, with that, that there's sort of there's so much you can tap into, but it's kind of like the virality of everything around vibe coding. It's the fact that you've got, like you were saying, you've got people trying to create viral apps. I think of one creator, right, where myself and my wife, we both have liked this YouTuber for quite a while. He creates content that's mostly about like his family life, right? It's not particularly techie, but he's a very kind of creative person, and he's always made things with technology, and he's mostly a filmmaker, but he's always sort of tapped into some of the sort of cutting edge tech, or at least in the mainstream cutting edge. And he's really jumped on vibe coding and AI, and for me, it's completely undermined my opinion of him, because I actually see it now as, do you know what?
So
he's not really. Say again?
So you're gatekeeping.
Well, I kind of am a little bit, but it's more it's more the fact, not that he's wanting to be a developer or even wanting to create things. It's that he's completely, the most important thing for him is the virality. It's the marketing of things he's making, and the things that I've looked at that he's made. One of them was essentially a PDF. You could go on Gumroad and buy it, and it was about how to move to another country. Useful for some people because he's just done that, but looking at it, it looked like it was created in ChatGPT with one prompt, with create a load of images, of someone moving to Spain or whatever, throw it in a PDF, put it on Gumroad, buy, sell it and make money. And it's that, I think, that people in the article that I wrote were tapping into, is this arrogance of, I can do anything with vibe coding. It's just as good as you, is kind of the tone they take, and that real developers are not really sort of taking glee at seeing them fail, but they're kind of in their heads going, well, I did tell you that it was going to happen. I told you so.
I think after 25 years or 30 years of coding, I found that there is always this is a reoccurring theme. And you just basically, you just don't feel glee in people failing. You just wait for them to fail and just basically that becoming a thing. I mean, I remember with Flash, super creative environment. People said like, "Oh, why do you even do HTML? Flash is the future, and there won't be anything else." Adobe was just gleefully saying 99% of the people out there have Flash enabled, so there is no need to actually do fallbacks for it. And then basically Apple came around with a really, really cool device that didn't run Flash, and everybody was screwed. And you could gleefully say, like, "I told you so." It was actually sad because a lot of people from the Flash community were super creative people and lovely. I mean, the amount of irreverent humor that was on the web because of Flash would not have been possible with web standards back then, or building things from scratch with the web stuff. And then there was Second Life, and I remember when I was in a pub in London, and the Second Life people came around and tried to hire everybody and said like, "Oh, everybody in the future will have this thing." Then Metaverse came around, and everybody said like, "You're gonna have like a computer on your head, and like we're gonna have smart glasses." Then people said like, "Oh, Apple is gonna do the Vision Pro now. If anybody can make it happen, it's Apple." There's a lot of stuff that comes and goes, and the hype cycle becomes shorter and shorter. But it's frustrating how much energy and how much effort is being wasted on this. And if somebody loses their identity or basically gets their driving license doxed on the web because somebody is too dumb to actually just put a simple encryption on things, that's a different issue because that hurts people. I don't mind people saying they can replace me. I remember when I started as a web developer, and it was always like, okay, 1997, 1998, well, 1999, basically. Before that, nobody did anything else. And I came up to people and said like, "Yeah, okay, I can make your website, and it costs you that much." "Yeah, my cousin's son has Dreamweaver, and he can do that too, or front page." And my response was always like, "Let him do it, and I see you in 3 months when everything's broken and you need me to fix it, and I charge twice the amount."
Yeah.
And oftentimes that happened, and I was very happy to delete the crap later on and do something better. But it was a learning thing that people had. I always had, like, when I did pitches, I did an arrogant thing as well, where I showed people 3 pieces of paper and said them good, fast, and cheap, and then asked them to pick 2 of them because all 3 are not possible. And that's things that we find right now that we have to learn about this whole vibe coding thing as well. But what I found, what I also want to know or see the numbers of, I'm 100% sure there's about 100 loud vibe coders on this planet. And everybody says like, this is a new movement and everybody is a vibe coder now. Most people will have tried it, will have failed and gone away with it and said like, okay, cool, or build an app that is basically Space Invaders and get really excited about it for 5 seconds and then delete it. So I think the whole the way it's sold as a revolution, I want to see the numbers, and I'm quite sure it's not a revolution yet.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point, because I'd love to then know as well, going back to that earlier point, how many people start as vibe coders and then actually learn to code, and how many of them do, like you said, play with it, go away from it. How many of them say, well, I've got no interest in learning to code, I'm just going to stay where I am building these things. It did actually make me think, though, that maybe, because I sort of used one of them, Vercel's V0, and the results were, you know, I mean, I don't want to criticize it necessarily too much compared to the others, because I think they're all largely the same, but essentially it was a kind of relatively nice UI without the functionality I really wanted. And I was like, oh, that's quite fun. But the name might actually be quite good, because if you can think of it as that, as it is just to get you started, and it's more about prototyping, getting ideas. Sometimes the thing I find it really useful for is when I go, here's a thing I want to make. What would that even look like? You know, almost getting it to just strip it down to, well, this is sort of what the UI could look like. And that's useful in itself, knowing what you need and what you don't.
It's weird that we cut through to the interface immediately over and over again. We try to do what you see is what you get. Then now we try to get generative things to do things, and just like a good interface of an app that I've been using for years and years is something that grew organically and grew with like little features. It's not like the number one interface to be perfect. It changes over time. And I think we're shortcutting through that whole process to iteratively test with users, to actually do A/B testing and find things out. And then people start actually using AI to generate fake users and test it with that. And then they're surprised if they like it. And you're like, well, you've written them this, so they like it. So it's not a thing. But the vibe thing is an interesting one. It makes me think of like music. Like, I mean, I hate free jazz, but I know there's a lot of craft in it. Like nobody plays something like that that sounds to me like a cacophony, but like basically it has a lot of math behind it, a lot of skill behind it. It's not like you can go on with an with an accordion and start making some noise and go to the Montreal Jazz Festival with it. You might be accidentally as good and making as complex music, but you can't repeat it. And I think this is where the skill comes in. Like, use these tools to enhance your to change the vibe and basically say, like, what if I could do this? But then actually start thinking about, like, what if I could do this and not make people lose their identity when they use it, or not pay through the nose because I don't know how to secure my model and the key has leaked and everybody on the internet can use it.
Yeah.
I'm more worried about what it does to the job market. I mean, this article was really interesting in the New York Times that basically says that tech jobs were like the coolest thing in America. Like, get into a tech job, and now basically the big ones like the FAANG companies are all not hiring, and they're not hiring juniors. They're hiring seniors, and they're hiring architects, interestingly enough, and people who actually know how to write specs for code, so the machine can actually create code that makes sense. But science graduates are actually really, really struggling to find jobs directly in the market right now. There's intern programs again, but I think this is the bit where tech companies get a bit too excited about their own technology to actually say, like, oh, we don't need to hire juniors anymore, and that's going to bite them in the backside really, really soon, because to have a product maintained well, you have to have a team with tiers. You have to have juniors, seniors. You have to have and I mean, there has to be a constant flow, because people leave and go all the time, and come and go all the time. And if you actually have no onboarding, and if you just say, like, an AI can do what you do, so why did you come back and learn it first? That's really not good. And at the same time, I'm okay that it actually killed that $165,000 attitude that people say, like, I come from university and I want to make double the amount of money that you make after 10 years of experience. But it's interesting how it breaks that market more than it actually breaks the apps that are out there and being generated, like, and the trust in technology for people as a career. That's something that's really worrying me.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think back to when I was in university. I mean, that was 2010. But like, you know, at that point, it was the whole learn to code, and it was, you know, I was doing like a media production degree, so I already knew I was going into an industry where it was hard to get a job with the degree that I had. But then you were hearing people saying, well, kind of anything technologically, you know, is going to be good in the future because we're going to automate everything. And then that conversation turned into, but we're actually going to automate all of the IT jobs. So maybe you should go and learn to become a farmer. And that's become the meme in the last sort of year or so, is the whole, you know, when are we all going to become farmers? Go and learn to farm. But maybe, I don't know, maybe I wonder if there's something as well about actually knowing. Is it harder now to actually know what somebody knows? Because you could have somebody who's got an entire portfolio and they've never written a line of anything that they're putting out there, and it could look nice on the front end, it could have a passable back end that you maybe can't immediately tell, you know, was vibe coded. And I wonder if it's actually just harder to know what juniors will do, because you think that you can just automate them away, but then also to know if somebody is at that point in their career where they're a junior, because their portfolio might look like it's more.
I think the solution to that is let people debug things in interviews rather than create things and wow them with what they're doing. I mean, when I worked at Yahoo, we always did that. We gave people a PSD and told them to build a website, and then we actually didn't even look at the code, but asked them to talk us through their decisions, how they've done simple different parts of the page, show us what they have in there, and how they approached it. And this is basically the skill that as a developer you need to know. You're not there to write code. You're there to debug and enhance code. A lot of the amount of times you write from scratch, and that's where vibe coding can can go and have fun. In a professional environment, I've probably in my 30 years, I've had 3 projects built from scratch. Everything else was maintaining, fixing, or adding on to other projects. So understanding and debugging code and improving code is actually much more of a skill than writing a great algorithm from scratch. This has always been the amount of people that we don't need that many of, but we need a lot of people to fix 30 years of horrible things we uploaded to the web.
Yeah. And I guess, when we've got so much, I mean, I was just before this editing a session from the World Congress with, I believe her name's Hannah Hennig from Siemens AG. And she was talking about the way that they're using AI. And it was really interesting because she was sort of saying there was no mention of replacing anybody. And I know that might not be popular anyway at a developer conference, but you could see that their philosophy was to use it to enhance what they're doing and to speed things up and all the productivity gains, but in a very meaningful and measured way. It wasn't about doing these big shifts immediately. It was about lots of focus groups and testing and observing productivity, but then speaking to people about that productivity. And effectively what she was saying is we can have teams of agents, but they will be, supervised, and they'll be orchestrated by an agent, but then that will be overseen by a human being, and that it all comes back to that. So there's no escaping it. If you have to learn how to code to even be able to just say to an agent, this is wrong, even if you just pass that ticket up to somebody who's more senior than you, that's still a valuable skill set and a valuable person within a team, I think, anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, like telling people that in 10 years' time they're going to work in space is a bit like when your parents tell you can become an astronaut. Like, I mean, the biggest lie your parents ever told you was like you can become anything you want. It's just very bizarre. Like, I mean, the other thing that I found interesting is that the other bit that is already a victim of the vibe coding thing, or like code generation in general, is that boot camps are basically dying out. And I'm not sure if I feel bad about this, because I had a lot of like people that, again, it felt to me like one of those shortcut things. Instead of just learning how to program or learning how to develop, people went to one boot camp, spent a lot of money on that. And that one then told them like, oh, now you're actually going to get a job with like 6 figures, no problem. And all of them told you, taught you React, or before that taught you Angular, like taught you lots of things to be dependent on. And I had so many people saying like, I'm so frustrated trying to hire developers that just went through a boot camp because they come with a stack that my company doesn't do. Those boot camps didn't actually get you started on development with the basics of the technologies, like maybe Swift, maybe HTML, CSS, or Java, or whatever you want to have on different platforms like Android, iOS, and the web. But basically just said like, oh, just use React Native, and here's the 5 things you click together, and thank you for your $5,000, and now good luck finding a job. And I think it felt to me always like a rip-off to people who actually want to get a job quickly or need to get a job quickly, instead of just like getting a job as a career. And then it felt like, oh, if you give us $5,000, you're going to be working for Meta tomorrow. And no, it's never been the case. And boot camps were great to get you started, but it felt like a bit of a rip-off. And it's interesting how they basically, all the big bootcamp companies are tanking at the moment, because the whole message of saying like, oh, you're going to work for one of the FAANG companies as soon as you gave us the $5,000 and successfully got that certificate is not a truth any longer at all.
No, I wonder as well, just on that, I think back to that sort of 2020 era, that seemed to be really when boot camps were sort of really making a lot of noise. And it really felt like, and I was part of that, I was trying to make a career switch, and you kind of used the lockdown, I suppose, but you kind of took advantage of some of of what was happening to kind of learn to code and try and make the career switch. And the boot camps were definitely the big sort of carrot that they were dangling, saying to anybody, look, if you want to do this career switch, go down the boot camp route. You're going to learn this modern technology. It was always React, like you said. It was always seemed to be React, because I think it's just the one that you might have heard of. You can mention Meta and Facebook alongside it, and people go, well, it must be credible then if they're using it. And it was very much sold to people as this is how you can get in, because it was almost a way of sidestepping the need for like a network, or to know which companies that you could work for, or even what stack those companies would use. It was like, well, don't worry about any of that. As you said, give me X thousands of dollars and you can do this boot camp and you'll get all the answers to those. And in reality, it was probably a very expensive way for somebody to attempt to switch careers. But I don't know. Again, I'd like, going back to you saying about seeing the stats, I'd love to know what the actual employability rates are for these boot camps, because I've seen it in education. Those numbers can be fudged quite heavily and made to look like, you know, everybody gets a job. And the fact that they're shutting down just says that they're not, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's tricky. And I think again, I mean, why can't we just be a professional environment that hires people for a career? Why does everything have to be accelerated? Why does your app have to be immediately a viral success? Why does every developer needs to hit the ground running when they come into your company, rather than getting into a process where they can learn about the company and be part of it? I'm very excited about our partners here, like some of the companies that also editing the videos, like Zeiss and Siemens, as you said, like the ones where you just like, oh my God, your eyes roll over and you're like, boring old companies. But holy cow, they do some really clever stuff, and they really look after their people. In their job interview, it's not about like how much code can you write in the next 3 weeks or 2 days. It's about like, where do you see yourself in the company in like 2 years, and not the fake, like, where do you see yourself, but like they have processes for you to get started and stay in the company. They want to invest in people. And I think that's something that's kind of missing. And that's where this bootcamp thing, I'm not too sad about it. I mean, I was asked a lot of times to become a bootcamp trainer as well. And I can only imagine that can be super frustrating, because you have to go through the same slides every single time and just basically get people to get an idea of what the job is going to be like, rather than just teaching them how to become that person that has that job. Which brings us to the last point, which was also in the newsletter last week by Val. And I like that attitude that basically said like that AI-assisted coding is where you forget that the code even exists, and we already have a phrase for code that nobody understands, which is legacy code. I mean, the difference, I think, the only difference is that vibe coding, when you read the original Andre Karpathy thing, is not meant to endure anyways. It's meant to actually change all the time, which is, again, bringing me to how wasteful that is. But at the same time, it's like the legacy code is the one that doesn't move, that doesn't actually change anywhere. And that's, I think, the bigger problem, that legacy code also needs to go through audits, whereas like vibe code does not. But I like the idea that they point out that for prototypes and throwaway code, fine, totally okay. But basically, giving a credit card to a child is the great example here.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, it's brilliant. It's such a good article, because it's really sort of plain English. It's really easy to understand, but it does just show you. And I mean, if you wouldn't mind just scrolling up just a little bit as well to see that graph, because it's just again, it's like absolutely no numbers on either axis. Doesn't matter. It pretty much is how it goes, right? And it's like, I saw something this morning saying something like the token limit on one of the models, I can't remember which one, has increased. And, you know, it's now 1 million tokens. And they were saying, you know, this is bigger than most code bases. And so, you know, now you can just run your entire code base through it, and it's going to know what it's looking at. I go back to my original point of, yes, but how much of that code base was previously generated by AI? And now you don't even need that code because you wanted to do something different, and it's just left it all there. And that hits upon the point of, I thought to myself, he says in there, vibe coded code is basically just creating technical debt. And I thought, yeah, but if you don't know what that is, then you wouldn't care. And that's kind of the problem.
Yeah, and I think there's also the other bit that, to me, a lot of the vibe coding messaging out there, like, oh, use that platform and become a creative developer, is a subscription in disguise. You know, like, you make yourself dependent on one environment that basically does the thing for you. And I don't know how easy it is to go from V0 to OpenAI or Anthropics or whatever vibe coding environments. If there is a way to actually move your app from one to the other, I guess not, because all you're asked to do is take the prompt and move it to the other environment and see what that one does with it.
You can export the code from V0, and it does do, I think, a standard. It will just start using React. I'm not 100% sure if it uses like Next or if it chooses a framework, but you can export the components. So you could then, I suppose, move them into Cursor and use Claude. But yeah, it's very it's kind of strange to see, I suppose, the way that we are just so happy to just have something, like you said, kid with the credit card. We're so happy to just go, yeah, go on, fill your boots, make me something, do whatever you like.
I like the when the new GPT-5 came out and people were like, oh, its math capabilities and coding capabilities are so much better. The first thing I tried was that old problem that they had before. Let me just see if that's a. Did I put it on X? I'm not sure. I'm not putting many things on X anymore, but it feels like it's the easiest to find old posts of mine. And let me find it. Yeah, this one here is my was the bit. Nope.
Is it one of those quirks?
Yeah. So basically, it's like when you ask it to do 8.8 minus 8.11, it says it's minus 0.31. So what it doesn't understand is that after a comma or after a full stop here, that's actually a fraction rather than a number. So it just recognized 11 is bigger than 8. So it actually subtracted those from another, and then actually just used the 8 and said like, okay, minus 8, minus 831. And yeah, people answered in other platforms and basically found a prompt like 5 times. And somebody who answered actually wrote a script that would do the same wrong math and called it GPT math. And but I found that fascinating that those simple things are still not there, and it's interesting to see that people are just like very excited about this thing happening. But yeah, it's not. It's if things like that are not there yet, then I'm not trusting it completely. But then again, maybe I'm just old and need to trust things before I get them out. But at the same time, I'm not building software that actually people lose their credit cards or their license plates, their licenses either. So
yeah, learned a lesson.
I think it's just it would be interesting to get numbers. As I said, like the vibe coding thing, I'm super excited about it. I think it's the more going back to the GitHub, like 8 million, 1 billion developers, like democratizing development. I'm all for allowing people to just build things that are completely insecure. And I think nobody's winning from that. And especially people finding glee in other people's failures when they actually result in probably really, really big issues for people, then there's no glee in that. Like, it's like, it's fun to see technology fail, but it's not fun if everybody's lives are connected with it.
No, that's true. But I will say, just to end up, that it was quite nice to finally use my favorite German word, which we don't have a better example of in English, Schadenfreude. What a great word. And just because it's just, it seems to be people are having that attitude. And I was going, really, if you've ever spent the day on the phone with your bank trying to sort out a new, card or whatever after you've had a breach, that it's like, come on, are we really going to laugh at people for having those issues? But yeah, but I got to use my favorite word. So
fair enough. I also learned that the CEO of IKEA is actually meant to become the next president of Sweden. He's really good at putting together cabinets.
Hey. Brilliant. And you made me even more red than I was when I started. Brilliant. Even our producer in the background liked that one, Chris. We got a little ouch, ha 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 in the chat. So yeah.
Fair enough. All right, then that's it for today. We see you next Wednesday with a guest, hopefully. And by then we will have done all the video stuff and written it up as well. And vibe away. Bye-bye.
Vibe away.